Fantastic. I think we probably have as many folks as are joining at the very moment. Eventually, we may have some other folks filter in, but let's go ahead and get started since we are just past the 12 o'clock mark. And I will start and kick off our webinar with a quick introduction. Thanks again for being here, everybody. My name is Joanne Legler, and I am the Director of Admissions for the MBA for Executives program at the Yale School of Management. Today, we are hosting a webinar sort of titled The Student Experience, and we're excited to introduce you to a couple of our students who have agreed to spend some of their time today to share their experiences with you, and if we have time towards the end of our webinar, to answer your questions as well. I'm joined on the back end by two of my colleagues, so you'll see them here as well, but I'll be hosting and moderating our talk today with our 4 students who are here with us today. So thank you again for being here, and we're going to kick off with quick introductions. I'll do it alphabetically by first name so that we can have a place to start from, but I'll start with Donato. So quick introduction, if you would let folks know, obviously your name, class year, area of focus, what you do professionally, and then anything you might want to share about yourself that's personal that we might not be able to find if we were to Google you. So Donato, if you don't mind kicking us off with a quick intro, that would be great. And we'll ask you to just take yourself off mute real quick, because it's probably your first time doing a webinar, right? So
sorry about that, everyone. So my name is Donato Clay. I'm in the class of 2021. I'm in the healthcare area focus, and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I currently work for DaVita Kidney Care, where I'm the regional operations director for hospital operations here in Las Vegas. And something that I guess is semi-interesting about myself is that I am a snare drummer in the Los Angeles Police Bagpipe and Drum Band.
Definitely did not know that. That's great. Thank you, Donato, man of many talents. Kate, would you mind going next?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm in the asset management focus area, and by day, I'm the chief legal officer for AIG's mutual fund business. I'm based out of New Jersey, and before AIG, I spent about 8 years at a big New York law firm, Paul Hastings. And see, something fun. I was going to say something else, but since you mentioned the drums, I actually used to play piano pretty seriously when I was younger. I haven't played lately, but to keep with the theme, I do love classical music, and kind of miss going into the city for a lot of things, but leave that for discussion for another time.
Thanks, Kate. Hopefully we can start a band before too long. Krista, I'll go to you next.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Krista Cass. I am part of the class of 2021 healthcare track. I currently live in Boston with my husband and 2 cats. And my profession, so I currently work in the pharmaceutical industry at Vertex Pharmaceuticals, and we may get to this during our session, but I actually made a career pivot during my time during school. And then something that you may not know about me through social media is my 2 cats that I just talked about. I actually rescued them from the Middle East on my last deployment.
That's great. I'm sure they're super grateful to be with you and your husband. Thank you, Krista. And Mishak, if you would round us out, please.
Absolutely. My name is Mishak Cleary. I am class of 22 sustainability track. I work in manufacturing supply chains. I've spent most of my career in manufacturing operations, working in a number of plants. I'm in industrial space. So I currently work for a company, SPX Flow, that's an industrial company making industrial equipment. And I lead materials management and the sales and operations planning for the company globally. So I'm responsible for inventory and fulfillment around the world, as well as on-time delivery for the company. So with all the band members, you need a singer. That is not me. So that is not a fun fact about me. Sorry to disappoint you. I played the saxophone for a couple of years in middle school. And maybe something else that you don't know about me is that I'm the youngest of 7 children.
Great. Thank you so much, all of you, for offering a little insight into your personal lives as well as your professional ones. Our goal today, I think, over this very quick 45-minute webinar is to allow our students to offer their take on their experience, particularly over the last few months, but also for our second-year students, just over a year since they've been in the program, believe it or not, marching towards graduation at this point. But through them, we're really hopeful that you'll learn a lot about the mission of SOM, the curriculum of the MBA for Executives program, and then we'll also dive into a few things of detail-oriented related to things like travel, building a community, especially in our current world. We do hope to leave at least a couple of minutes at the end of this session so that we can open it up to your questions. So as you're listening to our students speak, please feel free to start formulating some questions that you might want to ask our students towards the end of our panel today. So I'll start with the first question, and I'll ask everybody to please chime in. I'll call on you individually just to keep it running smoothly. But we're obviously here, and our audience is a group of students who or folks who may be prospective students thinking about doing an MBA program. Maybe they're already applied. Maybe they're thinking about an MBA in the near future. So let's dig deeper into your own decisions to obtain your MBA, and particularly at Yale SOM, your choice for being here. So I'd love it if you would take a minute or two to tell us about your experience even considering an MBA, applying to programs, and then maybe, a little bit about your decision to choose SOM. But, I hope that you'll be candid and let us know if there were things that you were anxious about or, wondering whether or not this was right for you. So I'd love to hear your personal stories on that front. So Krista, you're in the center for me and you're also unmuted. So do you mind kicking us off, please?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was thinking about getting my MBA, I was a physician assistant in orthopedic surgery. And I think my biggest concern at that time was how was I going to balance both my patient caseload and a full academic schedule. So I think that was my biggest fear. And rest assured, for those who may have those similar fears, it's not the first time anyone's done this. And I think you'll start seeing that as you talk to some of your classmates, peers, and current students. It is a path that many have traveled. So if I can do it, you can absolutely do it. One of the things that I was thinking about when you asked the question, like why an MBA for me and why specifically Yale? For me, I had a project management background. And as much as I loved surgery, I really missed solving different types of complex problems. Not to say surgery isn't complex, it's just a level of complexity that you train out through repetition. And I just missed different types of math and quantitative problems. I'm definitely a nerd. And that's when I started thinking about getting an MBA. And then why Yale? One of the big differentiators for me was the fact that in addition to your course load, you can take classes across campus. And I kept thinking to myself, like, wow, what an opportunity. Not only will I be able to learn different types of business principles, but I can go and take courses at the environmental school or the engineering school or the law school. And that just really spoke to me.
Great. Thanks so much. It's really interesting that you thought about being a Yaley, through and through and looking beyond the SOM curriculum as well. Mishak, are you ready to go next to answer that question about preparing for an MBA and your interest in our program?
Sure, absolutely. So, going into it, I had similar experiences to Krista in terms of, how I was thinking about it and some of my apprehensions. So similar apprehensions. I'm married. I have 2 young children. There's a lot of time commitment that comes with that. And, what I was really excited about specifically around MBA programs was there were, a group of people that were more or less your peers. They had a certain level of experience similar to yours. They had track records similar to the track records you would had. Life experiences tended to be similar, at least within a range. And so you knew that it was possible. I knew that it was possible going into it. When I started to evaluate schools that I wanted to go to, I actually looked at the top 25 schools. I looked at every one of them that ranked inside of that. And I started to narrow it down to a small handful. Yeah, I fell in love with Yale personally, and this, I've shared this story. I fell in love with Yale specifically because of the mission, not just the mission around building leaders for business and society, but you also just sort of saw it through the process, connecting with Joanne, connecting with other, people during that process. It just felt extremely human. So, I knew that I narrowed it down to a set of elite schools. So I wasn't as concerned about that some of the small nuances there, but the culture, seemed like it was an extreme fit. The other part that I was excited about was to be able to take an area of focus. So a lot of programs might have more of a general management track. I really appreciated the fact that in the second half, that 25% of the program was really around a specific track. So I'm in sustainability. You see, Donato in healthcare, Kate in asset management. So that was pretty exciting to me as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a differentiating feature of our program. If folks have questions about that, definitely encourage you to ask the students. Kate just took herself off of mute, which was great. So I'll ask her to go next.
Yeah, so I think Mishak and Krista they checked a lot of the same boxes I was thinking about. And I guess one thing I would emphasize is the culture too. And I guess I could have said this as my fun fact, but my son is actually in undergrad there. So I've been wanting to do an MBA program. You know, you always put yourself last, right? So probably over 10 years. And I kept driving by that school of management, just like very longingly looking at it.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
what
I
I'm
just
here.
kind of, yeah, the mindset was kind of like, you know what, the only things that you're really going to regret in life are the things you don't do. And so I said, what, you know, let me check it out. The experience, after the experience day and working with the admissions staff, I was hooked. And so then if you talk about fears, pivot right over to executive assessment. I have not taken a standardized test in a very long time, so I was very nervous about that, but it was perfectly fine. I survived. I got in the first round, so you know, you can do it. So
Kate, I remember, if you don't mind me saying, I remember having that conversation with you at Experience Day and telling you could do it and it was going to go fine, and it certainly did. And I think that's a fear a lot of students are
yeah,
in a fear, but a common anxiety about applying to a program is a test. And it's great to hear you
it
say that.
was. I did. I was like, is there a waiver maybe? Or so the answer is no. But the fact of the matter is you can absolutely do it. So just don't worry about it.
I appreciate that, Kate. Thank you for the vote of confidence. I tell students that all the time myself, so it's great to hear it from you, having had the experience of having gone through it. Donato, tell me a little bit about your journey to the EMBA.
Yes, absolutely. So for me, I knew that I wanted to go back to school one more time, one last time, I should say. This is my third graduate degree. So I'm an attorney and I also have a master's in public health. And I was working for a health system in Southern California, and I knew that I did not have the opportunities that I was seeking, and I needed to probably supplement with some additional education. Then I'm a military reservist, so I ended up getting deployed. And while I was overseas is when I really started, doing my research into what program I wanted to, the programs I wanted to apply to. And kind of to echo what Kate said, it was really just attending events like this while I was in Afghanistan, and the support that I had from the admissions team was just astonishing. I think that really set the tone for me, just knowing what the culture was going to be like at the School of Management, essentially, just because, I think when you're comparing from different schools, there's definitely a sense of what the focus is or the level of support that you would have as a student. And so that's really what kind of solidified things for me with Yale. And so when I got back is when I was able to take the executive assessment and then, complete the application process. And I think it was about a year or 2 years ago this month when I came for the interview. And like I said, it was just an amazing experience.
It's amazing to think about where you were 2 years ago, and now you're marching towards May and graduation. It goes by so fast. And I remember you being part of our process then, and we're so thrilled to have you. And I thank you all for mentioning the admissions team. We work so hard to connect one-to-one with students who are interested in our program. So those of you that are on the webinar today, I highly encourage you to come and connect with us. We're really happy to do that and have individual conversations with folks. Donato, while I have you, one of the things I know that students come to us talking about is, how am I going to get there? How am I going to find time in my life to make the commute, to make every other weekend happen in person? I wondered if, being a bit of a long haul traveler, at least before the COVID times, of course, right now we are in a remote model. We hope to come back in person. I know you've been back in person since we've had those small opportunities to do so. But if you can think back to your first year when you were coming nearly every other weekend to be part of the program, especially from a greater distance, tell me a little bit about that. Did that factor into your decision about choosing schools and SOM specifically? What's it really like to travel that often? Are there challenges? Are there pieces that you thought were going to be challenges that actually didn't end up being that big of a deal, but kind of look hard from the outside? Talk to me a little bit about your travel experiences.
Absolutely. So it's interesting because when I started the process, travel was a consideration for me insofar as the schools that I applied to. So, I was living in Los Angeles at the time, so I had applied to UCLA, I had applied to Wharton has a program in San Francisco, and then I applied to Yale. Those were the only schools I applied to. And you would think that if travel was the only concern, I, would have not even left the city, right, that I was in. But it really was not that, again, as I got deeper into the process, that became less of a concern for me. And, the school was really wonderful in connecting me with others from the West Coast who also commuted and shared a lot of tips and advice for how they managed work, how they, the days that they would choose to travel, the easiest ways of getting to New Haven. And it was honestly never an issue. It took maybe, it took, I think, maybe 2 weekends before I really got into the groove of the best way of doing it. And but other than that, like, it's never really been a concern. And on a personal note, I really enjoy travel hacking. It's kind of my hobby. So, I think by October, I was already getting, upgraded to first class every trip, even though I was buying the cheapest tickets. So it was actually quite relaxing.
Status makes all the difference when you're traveling. Thanks, Donato. Krista, I wonder if I could go to you next as somebody who's a little bit more local and who's also now a second year, having done this in person, almost completely. What was that like for you, not traveling quite as far?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that was kind of interesting is Donato was also on my learning team. So I was the benefactor of some of those travel hack tips. So I didn't have to actually fly every other weekend in order to, learn those things for me. So again, I live in Boston, so it's an easy 1.5 to 2 hour commute, whether you're driving or taking the train. And I think one of the other things that really speaks to other Bostonians or those in the area is that Yale really is immediately accessible. It's not hard to get there. And there are so many opportunities to travel. So you can take the Amtrak and get there a little faster. There's another rail that you can take that's a little bit slower. And then, of course, you can drive. In the beginning, I found myself actually taking the train. It was an opportunity to just sit back, relax, get rid of all those new school vibe jitters, and bond with my classmates. And again, decompressing on the way home was fantastic. That same group you'd go back on the same train with and have an opportunity to talk about what you learned. And then towards the winter season, I started driving a little bit more just because you had more autonomy over your schedule. And I'm fortunate that I have a car. So some of us would commute together, and then you don't have to worry about the train potentially being delayed. And the last thing you ever want to do is be late for one of your classes. So there were just plenty of opportunities. And again, it's so easy. We found ourselves going down even on days to connect where we didn't actually have to be in class. So Thursday nights, you could actually get there earlier and connect with some of your classmates. There were events going on across the campus that you could go down on a Tuesday, which was amazing. So all in all, I have not had any reason to complain about the commute. And again, paralleling it to Donato's experience, I feel like complaining would be a little selfish. I'm not flying. It's super easy. And it's just a stone's throw away for me.
Yeah. Mishak, I wonder if I can go to you next. You are coming from a distance as well, being located in Charlotte, but we've also had a very different year than how Krista and Donato started in their first year, and much more remote learning due to the pandemic, of course, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But talk to me a little bit about what you sort of thought your commute might be like, and what you've or how you've managed to pivot in a more remote world since the program began.
Sure. So, I have a lot of things going on in Charlotte. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I don't know if I mentioned that. And I was still looking forward to, being on campus and getting the full, what I felt the full sort of in-person experience of a program. And that was pretty important to me. And then, a lot of my family is in New York. So I was also looking forward to at least being sort of adjacent to New York because of the easy commute. When I haven't been on campus for the program, and, actually I would say that it was probably what I needed but didn't know to be able to transition. It's actually been a great experience. We'll probably talk about learning teams, and Kate's actually in my learning team, as long as with a couple other amazing people. And so they've really collectively made it such a great experience. And then, the broader cohort, we're connected on every platform. There's a bunch of sub, groups for specific interests. So, we've really, pivoted in the COVID experience in a way that I would say we're pretty connected. And the cool thing about it is that I don't have to do the commute. So, I have the flexibility to be able to use that time to connect with anybody in a virtual way without thinking about the logistics of coming in and coming out. In between, a break in class for 10 to 15 minutes, I can run downstairs, grab a snack and come right back up, so I have that comfort, of being at home. So, there's certainly trade-offs, and I definitely look forward to, getting on campus. I think that seems like that'll likely be a real possibility. But in the interim, I would say that it's actually been the best transition for me in this first year, being able to have the flexibility of doing it from home and at the same time, connecting with all of the folks that I want to connect with within the cohort and the broader university. So
perfect. And I'm going to ask Kate to reflect back on your learning team experience. But before I do that, I wanted to talk to Donato, who's a second-year student. And if you could talk a little bit about what Mishak talked about, which is the opportunity to connect through extended classroom. So in your first year, we were in person, and there were times when folks couldn't come to campus. Maybe you were one of those folks. Can you reflect back on your experience in the first year of coming to campus, but then those weekends where either you or a classmate couldn't come or didn't want to make the travel, but were still on campus? What was your first year like for folks who were connecting remotely when that was just how we did things occasionally?
Well, funnily enough, I was the first student in my class to connect via extended classroom.
Oh, okay.
So I decided to, use my travel hacking skills and celebrate my mom's 70th birthday and coordinate that with a business trip because we have a family farm and we ended up going to Vietnam and Singapore.
Wow.
And so, but there was no way I was going to miss class. And so it was not, so the logistics and the support was easy. The literal 12-hour time difference, not so much. But other than that, it was actually a very, simple process, having, I think that's also what kind of helps the transition to Zoom be as easy as it was because, it's actually not even kind of, it's exactly the same kind of structure. Right.
Yeah.
And so, there was no issue, I think, going between being in class in person and being in class via the extended classroom, because you're still getting to interact with your classmates, you're still interacting with the professors, you're still having full access to the slides and whatever is being presented. And being back on campus the following class weekend, it was like I had been there in person. So there really wasn't, there wasn't any kind of friction point between those two.
Yeah, thanks. So for those that don't know, we do have the opportunity for folks to remote in, and that's why that I think transition was so seamless when we had to pivot over. But for folks like Kate, for whom this was their first year coming into the EMBA program and thinking about, on our end of things, how we were going to manage it, knowing some folks would be remote, some folks would be willing to come to campus. Building a team can be fraught with, oh gosh, how are we going to do this? And Kate has been very vocal about her experience in building her learning team. And as Mishak mentioned, Kate and Mishak are on the same team. Kate, could you reflect back on your experiences in the beginning of the program? How does one build a team that's this crucial and this central to this experience in a virtual world?
Yeah. First, I have to say our team is just wonderful. Shout out to Mishak. And I don't, it's not something you think too much about, but it's, but when you have a great team, it. And it started even before classes began, and we thought we were on the same team. And we have this other team member, Quinn, until we all got together and designed, team name, team logo, and we just kind of took it from there. You really have to have a willingness to work together. You have to have a willingness to take a chance and to open yourself up, because a lot of it's trust, and you have to be willing to be honest. Look, all high performing teams have challenges, and if you say there's no challenges, there's probably a lot simmering under the surface. And I think one thing our team has been really fantastic about is just really going all in. And the more we got to know each other, the more we trusted each other. We have open conversations, really good communications, really good support for each other. And as much as we're all individually competitive people, even the one member who says he's not competitive, it's never been a competition. It's been a great support. It's been for me a huge bright spot in my life and the community. Just I'd be just staring at my work computer all day, every day, and to have the opportunity to have a whole new community and people that I consider real friends. Kind of like once in a lifetime chance. So it actually, in a way, it's been super positive. And as Mishak said, he hasn't been to campus. I actually, when we had the hybrid structure, I was on campus, and one other member of our team was on campus. But 3 out of the 5 members I've actually never met in person, and I don't even think about it really. It's just, these are great friends, great people, like people I know I'll be in touch with for the rest of my life. So it's been awesome. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that, Kate, because we all know it can be really challenging, especially when we are on Zoom all day long and then to have to go and shift to another Zoom or a phone call when you're sort of exhausted from doing this all day. So I give you guys a lot of credit for being able to build this community. Krista, on that note, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how students have been innovative in the classroom and in school projects. You can't just, unfortunately, in our hybrid/remote world right now, get as creative maybe, or maybe not. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how students have been creative, innovative with things like group projects in this more virtual world.
Yeah, of course. So I think I might be one of those outliers that really has not minded the virtual experience. I love the in-person experience. That's not to say that I don't. I really miss the snacks, which we haven't talked about yet. But for those who are wondering, the food at Yale is top-notch. But in terms of how have we pivoted and how we've been innovative during COVID, first and foremost, I think our professors have done a fantastic job. They immediately embraced remote learning, all got on Zoom, have been extremely creative with how they present material, whether it be partially out of the classroom and then some group work in the classroom. It's just been fantastic. From a group perspective, there are 2 things that I can tell you guys about just from the past, month alone. My team worked on a project for one of our courses, and we interviewed the CEO of Athletic Brewing, which is a non-alcoholic craft brewery in the United States. And so what we did as part of that project was working alongside the Yale admissions team and staff. We sent each one of our classmates a tasting of the non-alcoholic beer to complement our project. So as we kind of told everyone what Athletic Brewing does, they were able to taste the beverage at the same time. And then this past weekend, for our legal context of management class, we had to, look into any type of industry and highlight a previous or ongoing case. And Haley Page was somebody who's going through a litigation case at the moment, and we were able to bring her into the classroom and open up an entire panel of Q&A so that people could ask her what she's going through and what that experience has been like from a designer's point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's so great. And to me, it sort of speaks to like, what can you do virtually that you might not have been able to do in person, and to have to pivot there, be able to pivot so quickly and make these quick changes in a virtual world is probably a really different and a strange silver lining. Donato, can I go back to you as well? Did you have any examples of something either innovative or cool or different that you think almost benefited from being in a virtual space versus an in-person one?
Well, first, I just wanted to say that, as all of this was happening, right, as COVID was working its way through the world, there were a lot of things that were in flux. Nobody really knew what was going to end up happening. And I feel that, the program was very innovative with its approach, and also, it had a lot of high touch points with all of us as students. And so there was the opportunity for those of us graduating this year in the class of 21 to delay our studies if we had wanted to, right? Because the idea was we don't want to take away from the experience, and we don't know, back then, right? We thought the COVID would be 12 weeks, right? Nobody knew that we would be a year into this. And I thought it was really interesting that, there was some discussion amongst our class in a group chat, and, trying to figure out what people were going to do, and nobody decided to delay. And I think that that's actually, I think, very telling of just the general innovation of the program, with how we were able to adapt, how the professors were able to adapt. And you realize that the quality of the education was not affected whatsoever, and the quality of the relationships was not affected whatsoever, right? And so I really do think that's fairly amazing to have 76 people say, you know, we're not going to break up this community that we have. And I really love that fact. And then from the, you know, it obviously there have been struggles, I think, in the beginning for everyone. I always think back to, we had a macroeconomics professor, so we had just started his class, Lorenzo Caliendo, and he is so energetic, and he just, this is someone who has a love of economics. And it was so difficult for him to, you know, he ended up buying a whiteboard so he could still draw on the board for us, had multiple cameras set up. He really made it, he wanted the experience to be the same as it would have been in the classroom. And, you know, he actually sent all of us an email last week, because he's teaching the class again for the class of 22. I think they just had it for the first time this past weekend. And he just, you know, he thanked us and said, you know, thank you so much for your support during that time, understanding how difficult it was for me to adapt, but realizing that you appreciated it, you know, really meant a lot. So.
Thanks, Donato. It's such a great story, because I think that energy still, you know, professors must feel the pressure of having to come through in that way and keep you engaged and keep you from, you know, sort of trailing off in your own thoughts, or maybe even literally leaving and getting up to go do something else. Kate, you've had some really great experiences yourself on the academic side of things with professors, as well, as we shifted into a virtual and then hybrid and now back to a virtual world. What's your experience been like with any either classes, individual professors, as they have had to make that pivot as well?
Yeah, and so we were really the first group back on Yale's campus, just generally speaking. So, so the academics are exactly what you'd expect, everything and more. So, you know, that was not a surprise to me. What I think I didn't fully appreciate is how kind of passionate, you know, to Donato's point, just like so many of these professors, they've been, you know, they're doing this. They're so passionate about what their subject is. They're so down to earth, many of them. I mean, cell number, the first, you know, they'll give you your cell number. There'll be, you know, one professor kind of iconic in his field. He didn't even have a TA, and he would set up time with anyone to go one-on-one over whatever you needed help with. And so and that was their first week trying this too. So they were really, it was more the kind of humanity and the human connection, and just regular people. And I think they really enjoy teaching the EMBA class. The discussions are great. It's great. I mean, it kind of goes back to the whole community point. And I was just so impressed by, it was just over and above. It's everything to support the students, everything to make this work. Not just, oh yes, I'm teaching you and here at a very high level. It was way, way beyond that in so many ways. And so and that's continued, by the way, throughout the year. I mean, some professors even did extra TA sessions, not the TA, but themselves put an extra time on the calendar to just be available. So it's just an amazing, I don't know, it's just a real testament to the culture, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, the culture, and I think we're so lucky to have the resources that we do at a place like SOM, a media services team, our programs team on the EMBA side of things, you know, being able to be helpful to you guys individually as well. So
they were fantastic. The first week, again, that was a totally new experience for Yale. It was fantastic. Yeah, sure, there's glitches. There's still glitches. I mean, at work every day I have a glitch, but all things considered, I thought it was orchestrated. It was just amazing, and everyone came together. Even the snacks that Krista mentioned. I mean, everything down to the last detail was thought of with really just the whole community in mind. And so you can feel that. It was great.
Thank you. I mean, as part of that team, but definitely on the outskirts of it, as our programs team really came together to bring students to campus, I agree, like right down to the individually packaged snacks and making sure everybody was safe and healthy when they did come to campus. I think we were the model for the rest of the university in a lot of ways. Mishak, I wonder if I can put you on the spot a little bit, and before we leave the topic of academics, ask you about your experience so far in the core curriculum. Our first years really are embedded in the core curriculum, and then I'd love for Krista or Donato to chime in on their area of focus too before we leave this topic. How has that been going for you so far? Have you felt like you've been able to take away lessons learned and apply them to work in the program to date?
Yeah, absolutely. So, with a manufacturing supply chain background, I've had different experiences, but within that function. So all the way up to running a plant. So you learn about businesses, running businesses, and sort of full aspect of it. But I've never taken an accounting class, as an example. I don't necessarily have to, be as customer facing or think competitor in that sense. So those were things that, were very insightful for me because I'm naturally interested in those things. But those are things that I really had to, leverage my learning team and TA sessions and extra time with professors to do. But I did relatively well in all of those, including things like econ. At the same time, things like operations engine, which I'm taking now, and not customer class, our probability and statistics classes, those are things that, I do use a lot more within my normal, day to day. And even then I was able to continue to take some things that I'm applying in real time. So that part gets to be pretty cool. When, you get a little bit of a boost of confidence because you understand something and you can contribute in a different way. But at the same time, you might hear something slightly different, or you see the math be a little bit different, or maybe you understand it more on a kind of a conceptual strategic level, and they give you sort of nuts and bolts like physical, files and tools to be able to do some things. And, I have. So, people on my team who manage inventory, I've been able to, connect with them and apply, a little bit different approaches to certain things. And as people on my team think about demand planning and forecasting, same thing, using probability and statistics to help increase some depth there.
So the impact is immediate, right? Even in the first year. In the second year, Krista and Donato have just recently finished up their classes in healthcare. Krista, I wonder if you would chime in on the healthcare area of focus classes specifically. What do you feel like you sort of took away from that opportunity to dig deep into the area that you've chosen as your passion professionally?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So over the summer, we focused primarily on our advanced or our tracks. And so for Donato and I, we're both healthcare, and I absolutely loved our curriculum. We had a few special courses. So I'll leave Donato to talk about his favorite course, and I'll talk about mine.
Sure.
So we took a investing for healthcare class and brought in another Yale SOM grad who was the course director. And we learned all about private equity through the lens of healthcare investments. And I just found it to be one of the most incredible classes because not only were we melding something that I did every single day in healthcare, we were adding the quantitative focus to it. So it was just fascinating to see how organizations like private equity are bettering society through improving healthcare. And that was just so meaningful to me. And I kept thinking like, wow, this is awesome. And it was inspiring. And then I talked about it in the chat briefly, but another little thing that I thought was fantastic was Yale that I did not expect. I pivoted during my time at Yale, and I thought that I wouldn't leave my job until after graduation. Mm-hmm. And it was through one of our courses that inspired me, and I finished my final exam, and I remember laughing to myself thinking like, oh my gosh, that was so fun. I wonder if people do this for a living. And it ended up being the catalyst for me to start looking into different careers on how I could start looking at healthcare from the lens of, quantitative science and modeling. And it was amazing. And through that whole experience, I really appreciated that I had the support of the Yale community, because many people, you're going into uncharted territory or uncharted waters. And I was really nervous. But I had my classmates, my advisors, different professors just saying, oh my gosh, no, absolutely, you can do this. And it gave me the confidence I needed.
That network is so important. And, we've talked about the community, and I do want to get there too. But Donato, do you want to chime in with a favorite class or sort of what the impact was of being able to dive into that area of focus?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, so for me, just because I have a public health background, the population health class that we took was, I think, really wonderful, but I also work in operations. So I can't really pinpoint it to a specific class, but I will talk about the caliber of the professors that you have is just astonishing. So the healthcare investment class that Krista mentioned the professor was, someone who founded his own PE fund, and he's an SOM grad, and it is absolutely inspiring. We ended up talking about another one of his investments at a completely in corporate finance, and then for population health, it just so happens that that professor is now part of the Biden administration and is going to be working on health equity. And the fact that you have access to people who are doing amazing things, who are far busier than any of you are, than any of us are, is just a testament to the caliber of the program. So yeah, I can't say that I can't pick a single favorite because it's just been amazing.
That's very fair. Thank you, guys. We have just a couple of minutes left. If you're okay with staying for a few minutes beyond our 12:45 deadline, I would not only like to do a quick rapid fire, but then also answer some of the questions that have come through. What we haven't had as much chance to talk about, although it's been woven into the conversation, is the community of Yale SOM, and you guys have spoken about it so much that I don't think we haven't mentioned it, but I think as a quick rapid fire, if I could ask everybody to quickly go through, please share with us who are your classmates? Who are the people that you are now part of this family with? And how does that reflect what you think is the ethos of our program? So maybe it's a little bit heavy, but I'm just curious if you would have like a 30-second soundbite on what the community in the EMBA program is like, who they are, and what that means to you. Kate, are you prepared to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, your peers, that's a huge part of the program. And I have to say, one of the best things, in my experience has been the class discussions where you're talking about really tough issues, really gray areas, but with people that bring a lot of horsepower to the discussion. And I actually think having the different focus areas has really kind of enriched the discussion in ways that I didn't even think about before. So I would say it's really in those discussions. You're living in the gray and you're with kind of the best and the brightest who are helping you think about things in a different way. And that's been fantastic.
Great, well said. Mishak, I'll call on you next. What would you say if I asked you a little bit about community?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I would say is, a couple examples of classmates, some of them are presidents of hospital unit or multiple hospitals. Some of them are, presidents of, specific like fintech firms. Some of them are running private equity. And then you have others that, are, right in the heart of COVID, working in hospitals day to day, running departments. You have others that are, very heavily in sort of the engineering space, running engineering teams, some in aerospace and some in healthcare. So the cool thing about it, and Kate hinted towards that, and I'll be really brief. Kate hinted towards that is that because of those specific asset management, healthcare, and sustainability tracks, I told you about my narrow experience. So even though I've had a lot of experience, it's been all within manufacturing supply chain. So, being in a classroom, with people with other experiences in industries that I have very little knowledge about really expands it very quickly, right? Because you inherently have some of those biases as great as you're doing. But if you're coming in open, you learn so much about the world and about those experiences, not just within other industries, but also globally as well.
Perfect. Krista, could you go next?
Yeah, for sure. I would even, I'd like to touch upon how the community isn't just your internal classmates either. While that is, immediately in front of you and so helpful every single week or every other weekend. In fact, I talked to 2 classmates on the phone earlier today. So you connect quite often and you develop this very strong, meaningful relationships. But I'd also like to highlight the importance of the relationship between the students and the professors. So I'm sure many of you saw a few weeks ago all of the craziness that happened with GameStop. Well, we were able to reach out to our professors and organize a special presentation off hours, not involved with any of our classmates, just to review some of the life lessons that we could impart from that experience in watching the stock market just go crazy. And then taking it even a couple steps further, the network, again, just isn't your classmates or the professors that are directly in front of you, but it reaches so far outside just SOM and the Yale University community. I have coworkers that went to Yale in different programs, and they've reached out just to ask how SOM is. They've had friends graduate from SOM, and I've even strengthened my own network in Boston just through my experience through Yale. And I just can't speak higher of the experience, and it's something that you continue to be a part of each and every day as you move forward.
Perfect, Krista. Thanks so much for, even going beyond SOM, how the network can continue to expand. Donato, I'll let you have the last word on community, no pressure.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, from a pressure standpoint, I remember the first day of class during orientation where they had everyone stand up. You're doing, different introductions, and the number of people in our class that have PhDs, the number of physicians that are there, the number of people who this is, a multiple graduate degree for them. But then also at the same time, the number of people who only recently completed their undergraduate degree. They had a ton of life experience and went to college later. People who are, run their own smaller businesses, right? Like it runs the gamut. Artists. It's just fascinating because you wouldn't think that you could take so many people from so many different backgrounds and put us all together and make it work. And yet it does, right? Krista and I were, as she said, we're on the same learning team as well in the first year. And you have two Army veterans, right? Who have very differing military experiences, but we still kind of came together in a very strong way that I think, for me at least, echoed a lot of the experiences that I had with the Army in terms of bringing together people from different backgrounds. And so it's really just been amazing. And the best part about that is that you always have a subject matter expert in any field that you can reach out to for personal or business issues.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, I think somebody just commented that sort of understanding of the diversity of experiences in the student body is important to remember. And that's our job in admissions, is to bring together the diverse a class as we possibly can on all metrics. We have 2 minutes left before I've probably been really rude with going overboard. So one question that I see in the Q&A that I think is particularly interesting is, what was the most memorable extracurricular activity you can remember from the last year for Kate and Mishak, or the last year and a half for Donato and Krista, whether it was in person or virtual? I know our programs team has worked so hard to try to offer these opportunities for you to just be students and classmates and friends together. Can anybody think of one that is particularly memorable from this past year or 2 years ago? Anybody can feel free to chime in. Yeah, Donato.
So our first year, the Yale-Harvard football game took place at Yale, and it was an off-class weekend. And I was shocked at the number of students, including myself, who flew from LA, right, to attend that game. And there was a lot of notoriety. It made the news because there was a climate change protest that took place between Harvard alumni and students and Yale alumni and students, who stormed the field and delayed the game for like 3 hours. There's no lights at the Yale Bowl, so the game was almost canceled, but Yale ended up winning in double overtime, and we all stormed the field, and I have wonderful pictures. But it was also really great because, a lot of the Harvard MBA students were there as well, so we got to connect, and it was just an amazing experience, a lot of history.
It's definitely a memorable one. Anybody else want to offer one last one before we wrap it up, Krista?
Just highlighting more sports events that we were able to go to when we were all in person. Anytime there was an event during one of our class weekends, we all made an effort to go and support, the undergrads and just have a great time. And then there was one weekend in particular that there was a hockey game at Madison Square Garden. So a large number of students, again, rallied at MSG, and we made a whole weekend of it. It was just fantastic to celebrate with your classmates and others. At the time, the dean had been there as well, which was fantastic. And yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Mishak or Kate, can you remember anything we've done in the last few months virtually that allowed for the community build to still happen? Mishak, anything come to mind?
Yeah, so I was gonna say nothing because after Donato said what he said, it was tough to top that experience.
Hard to follow.
But if I just say, look, the the team both we have representatives from each of the classes that put some events together. So we've actually leveraged technology even beyond just Zoom to recreate a lot of those experiences. And so we've had some virtual events where we can literally go from table to table virtually and network and connect with people. We've had some things, during lunchtime, after our happy hours. So those things have been really, really cool. I would say even in person, nothing would top, Donato's story. So I would try to do that.
I appreciate you calling out the programs team, though, who works really hard. We've got a new platform called AirMeet that we've been experimenting with. I know we've had some family get-togethers where you've been encouraged to bring spouses and children and other significant folks in your life to help experience this with you in that virtual world. Guys, we're out of time. We've probably gone above and beyond what we were supposed to, but I really appreciate you sticking around. I know we could probably go on for another hour with all of the questions that we didn't get to, things and anecdotes and stories that you would still like to tell, but what a great opportunity for our prospective students to hear about your experiences in this particularly strange year in our program, how many great stories you have. I appreciate your candor and your honesty with the things that have been a little bit more of a struggle, and I'm sure that our students who are listening are going to learn a lot. Rapid fire, last 4 seconds each person, a piece of advice for anybody on this webinar today who is considering applying to the program. Put yourself back in the shoes of being a prospective student. What's your best piece of advice, either from an application perspective or an EMBA perspective? Kate, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, don't worry. Actually, some of the classes I ended up doing the best in were classes where I had the least amount of experience, and you're going to have the support you need. Just go all in, put yourself out there and embrace the opportunity.
Great, be brave. I love that. Donato, what would you say to the audience?
Absolutely, go ahead and apply. Put your fears away, and if you have questions, reach out to people who have done it already. We have a great community.
Perfect. Krista, what would you say?
Well, those have been two great things, and I would definitely recommend also be supportive, because just always remember that it's not always a competition and that your classmates are your friends. So be supportive of their endeavors, and remember you have to see these people again.
True. Mishak, you're going to get the last word.
Yeah, I'll try to make it good. So apply. You don't get a decision if you don't apply. So absolutely apply. When you're at the point of making a decision, just know that Yale is within the elites. So then it's really about people network, because you're going to learn what you need to learn to be successful. Like, there's no question about that. So it's more about, what community of people you want to be around. For me is a big piece. And then assuming you make the right decision and this works for you, then I would say find your balance, right? Everybody here has a different balance in terms of what allows us to be successful, even the four of us who are on the screen. You'll find your balance, and just know that the program's designed for you to be successful. Not easy, but it's designed for you to be successful, and many have been successful. So I'm on LinkedIn. Reach out to me. I'll answer any questions offline. My name exactly how it's on the screen. So happy to help anyone that I can.
I really appreciate you being so open to that. Thank you all. Can't thank you enough for your time in the middle of a work day. Can't thank our audience enough as well for taking time out of their day to be part of our webinar today. So thanks for everyone who participated. Thanks to our staff who helped out to make this webinar a reality. We look forward to talking to you. Encourage you to complete a pre-assessment if you haven't already. Reach out to the admissions team. Watch our other webinars, and we look forward to seeing you at a future webinar. Thanks again, everyone, and I hope everybody has a great day today.